Right, we're quarter two, and turns out there's quite a lot of Copilots, so we'll get started. When I envisioned this session, I hadn't really thought about the half-hour time constraint. So thanks everybody for coming to the first session. Thanks for coming to the show. For anybody who don't know, Tom Arbuthnot, I've spent way too long in this whole UC collab space. Back from the OCS days. Before that, I was actually on the Cisco side of the house. More recently, Microsoft Teams. And I have my own company, Empowering Cloud, where we focus on kind of community work, educating the community, research, newsletter, all that good stuff. And I also work part-time for a telco called Pure IP as well. This is Empowering Cloud. If you haven't seen it and you're in this space, do feel free to check it out. A whole bunch of community experts. I think we're up to 35 subject matter experts now, contributing product briefings and SME briefings on key topics. And yeah, so hopefully some useful information for you there. I want to say a big thanks to the ComsVNext sponsors. There's a really good turnout from the sponsors. Do take some time to walk the sponsor floor, say hello to people. This show in particular, the sponsors tend to bring really good technical people, pre-sales, SEs as well. So there's some great conversations to be had to get yourselves up to speed. Okay, so in this session, I'm going to try and not just reel off a bunch of Copilots, because it turns out there are a bunch of Copilots. Kind of try and explain kind of what Microsoft are doing, hopefully give you some perspective to understand how to think about the different Copilots. So first off, what is Copilot or a Copilot? It's not a copyrighted term. Microsoft don't own it. It actually came from GitHub, initially used that terminology. And it's the idea of an AI assistant that helps you in some task. So it's a very generic term. Microsoft have kind of co-opted it and really landed it well in the market, that kind of Copilot and AI are the same thing. You can kind of think of Copilots as a subset, an AI use case where the AI is helping you do a job or a task. There are many Copilots from Microsoft, but Microsoft are also encouraging customers and vendors to use the term for their AI assistants. So they're not saying only Microsoft do Copilots. You can have line of business Copilots inside an organization. Other vendors could have Copilots as well, potentially. They're not looking to hold on to the term. They're almost the opposite. They're looking to kind of proliferate the term. I put it into the AI designer, and we got some pretty Copilot robots, so maybe that's what Copilots look like. In terms of the history, won't go into great detail, but this helps set the scene. And it feels like kind of AI has descended on our industry really fast, but it does go back a few years. So 2019 was when Microsoft kind of started coursing OpenAI and began investing billions of dollars into their project and supporting them with Azure Compute. And OpenAI in return started using Azure Compute as their primary compute. Then it was kind of a bit quiet. 2021, this is the first Copilot. GitHub announced GitHub Copilot, so a coding assistant. And at the time, that was the only Copilot. That was their brand. Initially using some of the early models, and then it flipped over to OpenAI's GPT-4. Jump forward to 2022, OpenAI launched ChatGPT, kind of took the world by storm, was like, oh, this is a whole new thing. And then by December 2022, ChatGPT had over 1 million users. By January 2023, just over that, we were up to the 100 million. So if you look at that kind of short timeline between 2019 and 2022, you could see it was going to have a big impact. Then skip forward a bit more. 2023, OpenAI launched their premium service, but also 2023 was when Microsoft started getting in the game as an option, a provider. They had initially what was Bing Chat. That branding didn't really land. It got rebranded to Copilot. And we go right through to 2023 when Microsoft announced Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is probably one of their biggest propositions. And then only recently, January 2024, they removed their minimum seat count. So in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of, you could argue this both ways. This technology's been around for a while and this has been bubbling, but also it's just massively accelerated in the last 18 months. So Copilot today, or Microsoft Copilot today, it's based on the ChatGPT 4 model, 4 Turbo, depending on which one you're using. They're using DALL-E 3 for the image generation as well. But it's important to understand, again, the Copilot brand is not tied to OpenAI necessarily. So while Microsoft are using OpenAI models primarily today, they may well switch in other models. They have other investments in other AI companies. They're doing their own thing internally. So the Copilot brand is not necessarily synonymous, grab a seat please, with using OpenAI models necessarily. It can be different models. So how many are there? That was the title of the session. So I thought, well, just ask Copilot, right, and we're done. Turns out not so much. So I did ask Copilot a list of all the Microsoft Copilots and their prices, and it gave me 4, and there's slightly more than 4. So yeah, interesting to see that even Copilot itself can't keep up with Microsoft and their branding and their name changes. So when we talk about Microsoft Copilots, as we're zeroing in on Microsoft's ones they give to customers, there's something to understand around the naming, and they're not perfectly aligned to this, but if you take nothing else away, this is useful to understand. They use Copilot for product name if it's kind of a separate product that you have to buy. So you buy that product, Copilot for X product, we'll talk about that, and then they use Copilot in for a embedded Copilot in a product SKU. Now they're not perfectly aligned to this, we'll talk about some exceptions, but that's the direction of travel. So that immediately helps you understand, is this something I'm going to have to pay for on top and add to my product stack, or is this something that's bundled into the product? The caveat there is, it will often be bundled into a premium edition of the product. So Planner, as an example, it's Planner Premium that has the Copilots. So I've been having fun with some of my peers in the last couple of days, and the number keeps going up as I talk to people. But I think this is pretty defendable now, but please jump in if you think I've missed one. There's 11 4s, so paid for Copilot items, and there's 15 ins. And I'll take you through those different kind of use cases and different products. And this deck will be shared, and there's a whole bunch of links in the notes under this deck for kind of references for each of the Copilots, so hopefully it'll be useful. I've broken it down into kind of use cases or product areas. So the foundation of it all, kind of business knowledge worker, specialist knowledge worker, IT type scenarios, and then very specialist roles. And I think that's the best way to understand where Microsoft are pitching each of these Copilot use cases. So first off, the foundation. So there is just Microsoft Copilot, quote unquote, and this is what was Bing Chat. So Microsoft initially, when they made this massive investment in OpenAI, they kind of thought, well, this is a great way to juice our Bing business, our search business. Search is going to get taken over by OpenAI. So they pushed it with that branding. Relatively quickly, they realized that branding is just not sticking. Bing has not got a massive brand, not necessarily the best reputation. So it flipped over to Microsoft Copilot across the board. And this is completely free to use. You would sign into this with your Microsoft consumer account. It's GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo. It's using DALL-E for image generation. You get quite a lot of value out of the box. And Microsoft are also bringing the Bing search engine and kind of integrating search. And here on the consumer side, their monetization strategy is they're kind of injecting Bing ads into the results, and like they're monetizing in a very consumery type way. So this is the kind of entry point. At this level, it's free, but your data may be used for training because it's consumer. So from a business point of view, you probably don't want to be using the free edition, but from a consumer point of view, free to access, free to use. And you do get access to some of the very current GPT models. So it's equivalent, if not arguably better than ChatGPT 3, although we can debate that definitely. So then the next step up is Copilot with commercial data protection. So this is the Copilot for business. Initially, Microsoft were going to try and charge $5 per user for this, apart from the M365 plans, but they've dropped that now. And pretty much any Office 365, Microsoft 365 SKU includes access to the Copilot with commercial data protection. So this is the same as the free Copilot essentially, except now Microsoft are not using your data to train. It's all secure. It's under the enterprise service agreement. You're signing in with your Entra ID. And when you sign in with your Entra ID, your Office 365, Microsoft 365 account, you'll see this like protected symbol here to show you that you're under the enterprisey version rather than the consumer version. So this is the foundation of a lot of the other Copilot conversations. Like if they're using base Copilot, they're using this Copilot with commercial data protection. And we'll talk in a minute, but you see a tab here between web and work. This is the divide where you step up into, yep.
Is there going to be a difference in functionality between the premium and non-premium versions of Teams users?
For premium on Teams specifically, there's M365 Copilot, which we'll talk about, which changes the Teams experience. For premium, it doesn't change much because that's using AI to generate transcripts and rather than kind of interactive. Good question, thank you. So the base understanding of Copilot is most organizations, if they're into AI and they have Microsoft 365 accounts, should at least be lighting up the Microsoft Copilot commercial, the commercial edition. CDP is not something Microsoft uses, it's just I use it to make the distinction between the consumer and the commercial version. Then we start to embed Copilot in different products. So you get Copilot in Edge. Again, this is free to access for consumers, but it also uses the commercial data protection version if you have it. It brings up Copilot into a tab, but it also has some unique capabilities. So now it's leveraging the fact it can read the page, it can do YouTube summaries, it can do PDF summaries. And again, if you're consumer, it'll be the free version. If you're commercial, it uses the commercial version. Similar story in Windows. If you're using Windows Consumer, you get Consumer Copilot. If you're using Windows with Enterprise, you'll get the Enterprise Edition Copilot. Again, some uniques here. Microsoft are putting in some things in Windows so you can tell Copilot to do some basic Windows controls, you know, things like dark mode or some controls. It's very light at the moment, but Microsoft are using Windows as one of their surfaces with, you know, billions of users to try and push Copilot in front of more people. So you can expect more and more Microsoft kind of making Copilot front and center of Windows. So these two are ins because they're not new Copilots, they're Copilot in those products. So that's our consumer area with one exception, which we'll talk about in a minute. If we look at business now, we step into the flagship Copilot is the Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is catchy naming. Most people kind of gravitate to Microsoft 365 Copilot or Copilot for Microsoft 365. And this is where, functionality-wise, we step up again. Because now, we've got Copilot embedded in the Office application, so your Teams, your Word, your Excel. So this is what you see Microsoft demo a lot, like deep integration with Office. But you've also got the Copilot models having controlled access to your tenant data, your Office data, your SharePoint data. So the Copilots can be more intelligent around pulling data from inside your organization. And that is a blessing in terms of the type of information it can harvest. It can also be a concern for enterprises. They don't have their data controlled quite right, how much Copilot can discover. But this is your $30 per user per month on an annual commit. And this is what Microsoft will be pushing for most knowledge workers. This is summarize my emails, summarize my Teams meetings, you know, all the Office things you see. You've got to sit down, Michael, come on. So this will be the most common Copilot scenario. And when Microsoft shorthands Copilot for Microsoft 365, they're talking about this use case. The exception I just mentioned, I wanted to put it here, is Copilot Pro. Copilot Pro, confusingly, is pro consumer, so it's not business. It's essentially like Microsoft 365 Copilot, but for consumers. So it adds to your consumer Office 365 or your family plan, $20 per user per month rather than $30. But it exclusively works with your consumer account, so your Outlook.com, your Microsoft 365 kind of consumer type accounts. And a big difference here is there's no support for Teams. So even though you can get Teams in consumer Microsoft 365, you don't get the Copilot capabilities of Teams in the consumer edition. So that with Copilot Pro rounds out all our consumer, hey mate, all our consumer options. Now we're back to ins, so part of product. So other knowledge worker scenarios, Viva, you've got an in. So Copilot in Viva. Viva in itself is a suite of different products. Kind of went back and forward on whether those sub-products claim their own Copilot or not. But broadly speaking, if you're going into the Viva paid licenses, that's going to unlock the Copilot capabilities in those products. So there's not a separate Copilot to buy, but you have to buy the Viva Premium suites to get the Copilots. If you have the Microsoft 365 Copilot, there might be some better together type scenarios, but they can also stand alone independent if they want to. Another in for the knowledge worker is Planner. This is with Planner Premium. So again, you have to buy a premium SKU to get it, but then you get some Copilot task generation type capabilities. So that's our core knowledge worker scenarios. They're probably using Copilot with commercial data protection, and Microsoft is certainly wanting them to use the Copilot for M365. And then maybe they have the Planner Premium, maybe they have some of the Viva capabilities. Let's move on to more specialist knowledge worker roles. So broadly, this falls into the Dynamics family of products. So first off, there is Copilot in Business Central. So this is the cloud ERP for kind of smaller organizations, relatively early kind of Copilot use, but included in the license. So nothing additional to buy. You buy the license, you get the Copilot capabilities built in. Then we have a family of Dynamics Copilots. Now, the branding has switched around here quite a lot, but there's a theme to understand here, which is Dynamics are positioning things like Copilot in Dynamics 365 Sales, which is basic Copilot capability built into the SKU. So you buy the SKU and you get some Outlook and Teams integration for your sales users. You get some capabilities. But you've also got Copilot for Sales, which is essentially the step up that you can layer over, but you also get additional capabilities. So you will get kind of the same surfaces, Outlook, Word, but you'll get additional capabilities in Teams. And this is where you're stepping up to pay for a separate Copilot, and it's $50 per user per month. Again, annual commit. But bear in mind, with that 50, you get Microsoft 365 Copilot bundled in. So Microsoft are really trying to upsell you $20 for these extra line of business capabilities. And you also get Copilot Studio bundled in, which we'll talk about in a minute. So when, from a customer point of view, you've got to start looking at what do we get in the product, the in Copilots, what do we get in Microsoft 365 Copilot, and are these line of capabilities worth the extra $20 per user per month for the capabilities? And you can see Microsoft kind of trying to work out where the line is here on each of the products. What do we put in the in, and what do we put in the premium option? Similar story for Dynamics Customer Service. This is the kind of CRM, customer service type scenario. There's a Copilot in Dynamics 365 Customer Service, which has mostly text-based capabilities, things like responding to emails for customers, that kind of thing. And then, because the brands obviously don't line up perfectly, do they? Copilot for Service is the premium equivalent of that, where we bring in the teams, the meetings, some of the real-time capabilities. Again, $50 per user per month, again, including Microsoft 365 Copilot, so another step up. Same story again, finance. They have Copilot in Finance and Operations. That's core capability. So this is doing some basic queries around your financial data in Dynamics. And very new, of the kind of new add-ons, is Copilot for Finance. And this is where they're adding extra capabilities for finance people. And this one's interesting because they're adding extra capabilities in the Dynamics apps, but also into Excel. So even if you've got Microsoft 365 Copilot, there's some extra clever things that they're doing in this where a financial person wants to do some particular modeling in Excel. That would be the premium Copilot for Finance. This is one of the earliest ones. It's only in private preview at the moment, so I haven't had hands on with this one yet. But you can see the model here and understanding the in and then the for being an add-on. So keeping it moving, bearing in mind time, the IT roles. So Copilot Studio. I don't count this as a Copilot, but this is the ability to create your own Copilots. So this is one option to kind of roll your own, and it's a kind of no-code, low-code type scenario. So you can build extensions into Microsoft Copilot, or you can build your own custom Copilot kind of from scratch. This is what was called Power Virtual Agents. It got a rebrand. It's a much more than Power Virtual Agents. Now, there is a cost around this. So you can get started on trial. It's no individual license cost, but it's a consumption cost. So this is the first Copilot we've talked about where it's a consumption, not a flat rate. $2,000 per tenant per month, you get 25,000 messages, and you stack those $200, sorry, $2,200 a month. You stack those if you need more usage. So this is how organizations can build their own line of business Copilot that queries their own data potentially. And quite an interesting economical option as well. You can get a lot of value out of this, building your own line of business stuff relative necessarily to the $30 per user per month for the Microsoft Copilot. So this is definitely worth a look, particularly if you're in a larger organization. Power Platform. So this is one of the ones we were debating in the bar last night and I had to change. Oh, yeah.
One question back on the other to make sure that I understand.
Yeah.
If you develop your own Copilot bots and Copilot Studio, then you're not having to charge, you don't have to pay for the users to have the M365 Copilot. You're just paying on the consumption on the bots that you create.
Correct. You can build models where you plug into the M365 Copilot, in which case your user would need it to access it, or you can build completely standalone experiences where they don't use M365 Copilot. Yeah. No, good clarification. Thanks. So Power Platform have a number of ins that align to the premium Power Platform options mostly. So Power Apps, that's Microsoft's create your own line of business apps, and the aspiration there is you can explain in words what you want the app to do, and it will start doing the layouts for you. Early, but I think there's lots of potential there. There's a lot of kind of no-code developers that could go a long way with that. Power Automate, you can explain the things you want automated. And again, the concept is it will build them for you. And Power Pages, a relatively new product for generating kind of web page type experiences. So those are an in with a premium SKU. Copilot in Fabric and Power BI. So this is one where Microsoft's naming doesn't line up properly. It aligns to either paid consumption, what's called F64 as a minimum, which is hourly consumption for all of Fabric, but you get Copilot built into that, or it aligns to Microsoft's premium capacities, which start around $5,000 a month and go up, so proper enterprise stuff. So the gate to getting into that is quite high commercially, but then they go ahead and call their Copilots Copilot for Data Science, Copilot for Data Factory, Copilot for Data BI. But if we're following the naming terminology technically, they should be ins because they're all part of that single SKU. Great power in these, but very much at the data scientist level, like not your casual user. Also on the IT side, some consumption options. So Copilot for Security, this GA'd in April. The concept here is Microsoft have this stack of security tools and capabilities, all the logs. A security-based engineer, maybe a SOC engineer, can use Copilot to query it, start to make sense of the data. So they outline 4 use cases: instant summarization, impact analysis, reverse engineering of scripts, and guided response. I spoke to a peer in security, and he said it was quite powerful. It's very much aligned to working on the customer tenant at the moment. So it's more like an internal tool than a tool for a SOC managing multiple customers. But this is a capacity-based model, $4 per hour for a security compute unit, which is a new type of compute unit. Does anybody know how many security compute units they need? I don't think they do at the moment. Again, part of this experimental journey with Microsoft trying to work out how they monetize this, but I haven't got a good model for how you could start to estimate that.
They say 3.
Sorry?
Microsoft says they recommend 3 SKUs.
3, like 3 concurrently?
Yeah, that's about $3,000 a piece, so it's basically $10,000 a month to get it.
Oh, that's a good baseline. Thanks, Kevin. Another consumption one that hasn't got any pricing yet is Copilot for Azure. Because they seem to want to monetize something on top. So this will work across all the different Azure surfaces, help you understand your spend, help you configure things. This is private preview, very early, only a few customers have it. They outline some capabilities around design, operate, troubleshoot. Potentially has quite a lot of power and quite a lot of value. Azure, if anybody in here has used it, is quite a mass of products and different capabilities. So anything that can help people navigate that could be powerful. But no pricing yet. We'll see how Microsoft tries to monetize that. And there's a case to be made there of I'm probably using Azure more if I can navigate it and design it properly. So could that be a cost of sale for Microsoft? I don't know. So we've done kind of knowledge workers, specialist knowledge workers. We've done the more kind of IT roles. I grouped these last ones into specialist roles. So GitHub Copilot, which should be a 4, but came first. So they were GitHub Copilots. They had the whole Copilot branding initially. This is one of the most popular ones, one of the most deployed ones, and it's a code assistant. So lives in Visual Studio, or you can put it in command line to other IDEs as well. You've got kind of an individual consumer-like capability with a Microsoft 365 account or a GitHub account, and then you step up to business and enterprise, and that's where you're using your proper Microsoft 365 account, and you're stepping up to $19.39 respectively. I think this is one of the easiest ones to ROI inside of an organization. Like, coders get so much value out of this, and they're expensive resources, so anytime you can help them, that's interesting. And there's a lot of potential here for AI to be a second pair of eyes across the code base. So some of the kind of third-party demos you've seen around development and AI, they're doing even more extreme things about having it start to write code. This is, again, pitched as an assistant, not as a replacement. But yeah, one of the kind of almost no-brainer ones, I would say, in terms of ROI.
I heard a stat, and I'm not sure of the exact background of the stat, but 52% of, let's say, active GitHub developers are using Copilot.
Yeah, I could well believe it. I hear nothing but good things, and developers are quite a critical audience as well, and they're like, oh no, there is value there. Another 4 that should be an in, GitHub Copilot for Azure Data Studio is a subset product of the GitHub Copilot. I won't even pretend I know what Data Studio is or how it works, but it's again a big data kind of interface, but should be an in. It's part of the Copilot use case. And then this one, a little bit out of left field, again, just to show you how prevalent Copilot branding is. This is Nuance, who got bought by Microsoft a few years ago, massive in contact center space and voice analytics. They had a product called Dragon AI, Ambient Experience AI Dictation Tool. That got rebranded as Copilot. So I did count that because it's a Microsoft subsidiary company. So it's Nuance DAX Copilot. It should be a 4 because it's an add-on product in the Nuance suite. But again, this just shows you the focus Microsoft have on Copilot, that even the kind of still running as separate entity brands are getting on the bandwagon of having the Copilot branding. Another kind of niche one, but might be interesting to this audience. Microsoft have a whole range of products for operators, for carriers. And again, kind of a bit of a rebrand and a rejig. Copilot in Azure Operator Insights. So they have an Operator Insights product. They're overlaying AI there. Definitely a kind of niche use case, but interesting in that operators obviously have masses of logs and masses of data, have a real challenge to keep on top of that. So potentially a really interesting AI use case there. No public pricing, couldn't get any pricing out of Microsoft. Feels like a come talk to us and we'll work it out type scenario. So that was 30 minutes. I've got a minute to wrap up. It's a lot. The deck will be shared with you. The idea wasn't to take away that massive list of Copilots, but hopefully that gives you an idea of obviously how Microsoft are focused on it, how that's prevalent through all the different product sets. The Microsoft in versus for is a useful shorthand to understand what's going on. Am I going to have to pay extra? Am I adding it on? And there's lots of preview and experimentation at the moment. You will find conflicting Microsoft documentation. You'll find conflicting YouTube videos. We're still in a phase where Microsoft are working this out. So don't feel like you have to understand all of these. I would say look at your business use cases, look at what Microsoft are doing, and talk to them about where you think there's value. But also bear in mind, right, this is their big pivot. They're pushing this. Use this stuff, test it, work it out. Consider all the user adoption around it. It is not typically these products are not a buy and they just work type scenario. You need a lot of adoption and user change to get people to get value out of them, particularly in the knowledge worker use cases. Again, thanks to the sponsors that are here, Empowering Cloud. If you're interested, we have a whole range of content there, including some content on the Copilots and Copilot Studio. And with that, I don't think I have any time for questions, but I will knock around if anyone wants to say hello. Thanks so much for coming to the first session. Remember to go speak to the sponsors, and I appreciate you all turning up. Thank you. Cheers, everyone.